Hello, everyone. My name is Yada, and I'm a PhD student in the Heimer Lab at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Today, I'll be presenting our work on effects of headlock augmented reality on users' performance and perceived workload. Displaying information is an essential part of AR because the display is the first thing that people interact with when they are working in an augmented reality environment. Now, there are basically two types of information presentation in AR-mediated technologies, including a static view and a following view. The static view is also called word lock, where digital content should be placed in a fixed position in the AR environment. And the position of the AR elements doesn't change while the user moves around the scene. Another presentation method is the following view, which has two methods itself. One is the head lock and another is the body lock mode. In the following view, the content is more flexible and can be automatically adjusted based on the user's movements. In the head lock mode, the digital content moves with respect to the user's head movement, while in the body lock mode, the digital content moves with respect to the user's body movements. In this study, we are comparing the effects of head lock and body lock modes. These two methods were relatively less investigated in other studies. And also another motivation is that Magic Leap developers stated that since the AR content is constantly moving based on the user's head movements in the head lock mode, it can negatively affect the user experience and it can be obtrusive. And also Microsoft discouraged using headlock content by mentioning that objects' movements in AR could be unnatural and uncomfortable for the users. A few studies have investigated the effects of different types of displaying AR content. One of the earliest works in this field compared the effects of headlock and body lock method, meaning that they compared two following view modes together, and it has been shown that body lock content increases users' performance, especially in searching tasks. On the other hand, some researchers showed that headlock is a useful method for providing navigation for visually impaired people by preventing users from veering. And in another study also, the effects of body lock and headlock was compared. And the results show that users preferred headlock and found it less distracting. Some of the studies also showed that headlock can increase text reading speed in an AR environment by reducing the amount of head movements. Actually, there are not many studies that measured the effects of headlock versus word lock content, which is a comparison of a following mode and a static mode. And basically, this was not the main focus of the previous experiments, meaning that they mostly didn't use these presentation methods as their independent variables to investigate their effects on a given task in AR. Based on the previous studies on different types of AR presentation methods, we formed three hypotheses. First, we hypothesized that in terms of self-reported surveys, the headlock method will be preferred by reducing the perceived workload and increasing usability metrics, including helpfulness, ease of use, and participants' preference. And second, we hypothesized that headlock method improves accuracy measures, like performance measures like accuracy and typing speed, which can lead to decreasing the task duration or task completion time. And lastly, we hypothesized that headlock method can reduce muscular fatigue in the neck and shoulder area compared to a word lock or a static view. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are more than 300,000 people working as data entry operators in different industry profiles. The data entry operators typically sit in for extended periods of time while performing their job tasks, which are static for the most part. For this experiment, we used a data entry task, which is a seated office task traditionally performed in two steps. First, this task requires obtaining information from a secondary presentation display, and second, entering those information to an input device. This secondary presentation display could be a paper, could be another monitor, could be your phone, or any other device that can be used for this purpose. It requires moving your head and obtaining information from a display and entering it to another display. In the literature, some studies showed that this head movement can cause physical and cognitive fatigue in prolonged durations of working as a data entry operator. And in this study, our goal is to reduce the amount of head movement involved in accessing the data from a data presentation interface and entering that data into another system. We assume that having the image follow the head movement could significantly reduce the amount of head movement involved in accessing the information by presenting the data to the user's field of view. For this experiment, we proposed two data presentation methods in an augmented reality environment. We used a word-locked or a static view as our baseline, which includes presenting images in a fixed position in the AR display, where participants should directly look at the image to obtain the information. In this mode, if they move their head, the information would be disappeared or be partially visible because the AR content doesn't follow the user's head movement and it is fixed in the first place. We are comparing this presentation method with a headlock view mode, where images are not fixed to the background or in a specific position of the scene, but they are actually following the user's head movement. And while the users are moving their head back and forth to obtain the data from the first display and type it to another display, the information is always available at their field of view in different frames. And in this study, we showed them the photos of two forms, including an advising form and a US passport application form in the AR environment, and asked them to enter the information from those forms to a computer. And there was a total of 4 trials for each participant, and this experiment was a within subject design, and it was counterbalanced to prevent any bias toward one of the modes. And to conduct the experiment, we recruited 18 participants, including 4 females and 14 males, and their ages ranged from 18 to 26, and they all had normal vision or corrected vision with contact lenses, and no one wore glasses in this experiment. The level of experience in AR varied person to person, but they were mostly inexperienced in working with AR. And for this study, we used a Magic Leap headset as a device that user should obtain the information from it, and a computer to enter those obtained information. And we also used an EMG system, Delta-Stringo, to measure the muscular activity of the neck and shoulder area. Before starting the experiment, we assigned a few minutes to each participant to work with the AR headset and get familiar with the interface. Then we started the real data entry task. And each participant spent almost 3 to 4 minutes on each task, meaning that each person spent around 10 minutes to do all of the tasks. And we try to make sure that the task is not long, that participants get tired, and it's long enough for them to be able to effectively perform what they were asked to do. And after each session of the experiment, we asked them to answer 2 questionnaires, including a NASA TLX to measure the perceived workload of the task, and a usability questionnaire to measure the preference, the helpfulness, and ease of use for each mode. And also after finishing the entire experiment, they were asked to add their open-ended ideas and to express their ideas and feedback about each task. And in terms of perceived workload measured by NASA TLX, there was no significant difference between the 2 modes of displaying information in AR, meaning that participants didn't feel any difference in terms of workload while they were doing the task in each of the static and following view modes. And also for usability skills, there was no significant difference between the 2 modes on helpfulness and ease of use, but participant preference was surprisingly significantly higher for the word lock or static mode. And in contrast, typing the speed was significantly higher for headlock or following view, which led to a significantly shorter task completion time. But in terms of error rate, there was no significant difference between the static and following view. So actually, this result partially supported our second hypothesis, which shows that headlock mode can increase performance by reducing the task completion time and reducing the amount of head movements to obtain and insert information. But it didn't affect the error rate compared to the word lock or static view. In terms of EMG or muscular activity, there was no significant difference between the two presentation methods. Looking at the descriptive data, it showed that the word lock mode has a slightly higher muscular activity, but after applying the statistical test, it showed that the difference was not significant. So basically, headlock mode cannot significantly help to reduce the muscular activity and physical fatigue, or for this task at least. This result didn't support our third hypothesis. And for the open-ended ideas, they also provided some interesting feedback that can improve the usability of AR interface in general, like increasing motion sensitivity or providing zoomable user interface. And some of them mentioned that considering the limited field of view of the Magic Leap and many other devices, the headlock mode could help them to have the information in front of them without worrying about missing the information on the frame by moving their head. But the limited field of view and the bulkiness of the AR device was annoying in general because even if the content moved with their head movement, they couldn't see the keyword due to the headset field of view. And in conclusion, since both methods were equally new to participants, some insignificant results can be the outcome of a general lack of experience in using AR devices and technologies. And while developers discourage using headlock content, this study showed that the headlock method is not necessarily inferior to the word lock or a static mode, because we showed that it outperformed the static view in some performance aspects. And based on this result, we cannot say for sure that one method is useful for all of the tasks, but it should be noted that choosing the presentation method should be according to the purpose of the task and considering the device's field of views. That was my presentation. Thank you everyone for listening. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.